Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of the Kiln Restaking Rendez-Vous. Today we have a great episode for you today. We have Murat Akdeniz, CEO at Primev, and we have a formidable co-host, MXS, who is a principal engineer focused on Ethereum research and development here at Kiln. And I'm Edgar R, protocol specialist at Kiln. Guys, how are you doing today?
Wonderful. Pleasure to be here.
Same here. Great.
Great, Murat. So let's kick things off. I would love for you to kind of introduce yourself, give us your background, and how you ended up working in blockchain and crypto.
Yeah. So I always had an affinity for currencies and whatnot, growing up in Turkey and having a half American family with the US dollar and the Turkish lira always having some sort of parity. And I just happened to be on Reddit when the Bitcoin white paper dropped, and it immediately resonated with me. I was mining and trading right off the bat. So I was kind of a day one believer, but I never thought it would be at the scale that it is today. I always thought it was kind of some, esoteric nerdy thing that, I liked, but I never saw other people kind of, getting that same sense from the tech. And I'm very happy, obviously, today for it to have evolved. But yeah, over the years, I started trading, and then got more into tech to build trading bots, and then decided that I like building blockchains a little bit better than just trading. And I've been on a build journey ever since, right? So previously I was at Block Native, and there we were a mainnet block builder and a relay, and that's where all of basically a lot of my insights for Primev and pre-confirmations came from, where a lot of users were demanding that, hey, I want some guarantees about this block that you're building.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I would love for you to we're going to be talking about pre-confirmations today. So I'd love for you to kind of give us a brief history lesson on MEV and just block building on public blockchains in general, and tell us what are pre-confirmations, what are they trying to solve, and what you guys are doing at Primev.
Yeah. So MEV or MEV, however you want to call it, was largely kind of discovered by Phil and Flashbots, right? So the original Flash Boys paper kind of delineated that, hey, there's an interesting pattern here where the miner at the time, which today's the validator, is able to reorder transactions in a way that is more profitable for them, right? So they can extract this value, from the way they ordered transactions, and that kind of came to be known as MEV, right? And over the years, there's been some tooling and some products around it that Flashbots put forward and others have put forward. And we at Block Native were building Mempool Explorer at the time. This was around the 2020 DeFi boom, so people had a large appetite to consume mempool data and see what people were trading in real time. And people started building bots on this that can front run you and back run you, sandwich you, and all sorts of things that came from it, right? Now, with the merge happening, this transition from proof of work to proof of stake, the Ethereum community came up with, proposer builder separation. Essentially, the sophisticated block building act could be separate from the proposers, so that proposers could decentralize as much as possible, right? So we can have 1 million plus validators on the network, and we don't have to be constrained by the sophistication required to build blocks, right? So we've made an active decision to say, hey, we care about decentralization, therefore we're okay making this trade-off of identifying some or having the market surface some sophisticated actors to do this block building. So that's kind of how the merge and Mev's kind of foray into it happened. And around the time we at Block Native were a mainnet block builder, and we had about 15% market share at the time, and a main relay. So I was getting a lot of inquiries from Mev searchers, other transaction originators, being, hey, how do I get this guarantee that when I send you a transaction, it's going to be in the block that you build? And in the case where you don't, I just want to be on the network in this next block. I don't care if you build the block or somebody else does. So how can I source guarantees from the network? Well, it was difficult because it's how do you give guarantees to someone for the next block when you build only 15% of the blocks? And the next block builder built, let's say, 30% of the block. So nobody had this kind of control where they could give these guarantees. So I put forward this idea, well, what if there was a network of these actors that could give these guarantees, right? So we could put, the guy who has 15%, 30%, 50% all on a network, and then the user could interact with the network, and the network could give these guarantees. So that's basically, the founding, solution idea behind Primev and what ended up becoming mev-commit, which I'm happy to kind of dive deeper into.
Yeah, I would love for you to dive a bit deeper into like what is mev-commit and the different actors in the space.
Yeah. So, similar to how PBS kind of decoupled this role of block building with, proposers for the sake of decentralization, right? Blockchains and Ethereum, namely, has dealt with this trilemma for a long time, right? You have this decentralization trilemma where you can only be so fast if you want to be decentralized. We've consciously made this decision that, hey, we're going to have these 12-second slot times and try to go for decentralization over pure speed, right? But then on the other hand, users want speed, and they want things to work fast, and they don't want to wait. But they, most of us on this call, I presume, care about decentralization as well, right? So I do want to interact with a decentralized platform, but I don't want to compromise from speed. So that's sort of what mev-commit achieves today, right? So we're kind of making Ethereum fast in that sense, where we've decoupled the process of going on chain from the main blockchain, right? And we've kind of onboarded the actors. These are validators, block builders, relays, the supply chain of Ethereum onto a fast network, a mev-commit network, right? And then you're able to source these guarantees from them ahead of time. So you're able to interact with the network in a much faster way this way by getting these guarantees from all the supply chain actors. And this allows you to kind of decouple the speed of the underlying network from your experience. And this is what mev-commit enables. And because it's also, there's a chain with an EVM underneath, you can also program all sorts of new things on here with the Ethereum supply chain. And that's what we're really excited about for this year.
Super clear. Thanks a lot. I have some questions regarding the securities under the hood for like people who are sending pre-confirmations. So there is likely a notion of like collateral that has to be put by the validator who opts in. And so this brings to the topic of restaking. And so my question is more around like what's your collaboration with Symbiotic, and how can it how are you using it to make this work?
Yeah, so we've been a huge proponent of restaking in general. It's been a core part of our vision. And not just for enabling pre-confirmations, but just to enable new types of services, active validated services, AVSs, in the ecosystem. And, we happen to be very compatible with this vision. But, separately, we were all always believers in this vision, right? So restaking comes into play particularly for mev-commit and pre-confirmations, for validators to opt in, right? So today they do a set of actions and they have 32 ETH staked. And this is, the ecosystem is determined this is sufficient to some degree. And now we're expanding those actions, right? Now you have to do a little bit more, and with pre-confirmations, you're essentially opting into a new kind of paradigm, and you're saying, hey, I will honor pre-confirmations in my block, and that lets users, transactors, block builders know that when it's your turn to propose a block, there will be pre-confirmations in them, and that guarantee gives them more assurance. They're able to bid more for it. They're able to put more economics down the line because they have that guarantee. But that guarantee doesn't mean much if there's no economics behind it, because then you can just propose whatever block and then there's no consequences, right? So that's where collateral comes into play. But the key point there is, a lot of validators don't have a whole bunch of extra ETH lying around to add additional collateral on top of the 32. Now, some do, and we've seen this and we support it. But restaking becomes this like huge unlock, because now you essentially remove these collateral requirements. You can use the existing collateral, the 32 ETH in native restaking. And, in the case of Symbiotic, you have vaults that have, all sorts of coins, whether they're ETH denominated or Bitcoin denominated coins. that you're able to use for this additional security. So, both, Restaking and Symbiotic have been a huge unlock in that sense, because now we can onboard large amounts of validators and have them use their ecosystem tokens or existing tokens that their community has, that are already being used in some sort of way, whether there's an LST or something else, and they can be restaked for this purpose. And that kind of makes everybody happy in a sense. It's like, hey, I have these lying around. I want to earn yield with them. And I want to support pre-confirmations because I'm a validator, and I believe this is the future. Like, Ethereum should be fast. So like, what do I do here? Well, bingo. I can bring on these tokens, and I can opt into this network, and I don't even have to run any additional software. Just block billers do it all for me. So it's a really kind of smooth and nice unlock that we began working with Symbiotic for, and it's been an incredible journey.
Nice. So yeah, it's very, very nice. Let's discuss a bit about what's in for validators when they opt in. Because they are serving something for users, that is like be able to have fast confirmation time for the transactions. There is an economical value behind it. So what would be like the incentives for operators or validators to opt in to Primev?
Yeah. So it's very straight. Actually, it promised an increase in yield, and that's because we introduced this new transaction fee mechanism around time, right? So today you have EIP 1559. You're able to express your transaction fees based on what the network demands, which is the space fee, right, which gets burned, and the priority fee, which is what you're willing to tip the block biller in most cases. And that's the level of resolution that you're able to express something, but you have no sense of time, urgency in this expression today. It's a very low resolution fee mechanism, and you also don't have, a sense of, like which block that you're trying to send this transaction for, which is, something that, out of protocol has kind of evolved, because searchers and other mev actors kind of express these things in their bundles that they send directly to block builders. So mev-commit essentially creates an out-of-protocol transaction fee mechanism that takes time into account. So your bids on mev-commit kind of decay in real time, so that people who are committing to it are incented to commit to it as soon as possible and give you the best experience. But also now you're able to bid in this way, which trickles down to the validator, right? So the validator is able to now increase their the revenue sources by tapping into this new fee mechanism and by offering this. So it's a big unlock for validators, and the use of this fee mechanism will not be confined to pre-confirmations. We're going to look at, we've gotten this grant from the Optimism ecosystem to see how commitments can be used in that ecosystem. And I can tell you a very easy one is to have full interoperability with L1, right? So you're going to be able to use this fee mechanism to express a lot more than just kind of pre-confirmations. You can say, hey, I want to do this in network 1 and 2 simultaneously, and you can have those guarantees. And what's really nice about these crypto economic commitments is because the validator is staked or restaked, right? They have economics there. And because the providers, in many cases block builders or L2 sequencers, will also have a stake, that means that even if there is some sort of event on the chain where, in most cases it's a reorg, right? Reorgs happen multiple times a day, even though the depths of them are kind of small. Even when there's a reorg, that your transaction will be in the next version of that block, right? Because those actors have all said, hey, I will do this. So if for some reason that block gets reorg, then they're going to do it again because they've given you that promise. So you get this kind of almost instant finality guarantees by using this fee mechanism that you otherwise would not have. And that's a huge unlock that reduces transaction risk in such a major way to make this entire ecosystem a lot more easy to deal with, a lot easier to quantify your execution risk, and therefore, bring about greater liquidity, bring about greater user experience, and more.
Makes a lot of sense. Thanks. Let's move on with like the economic security of the system. So as you previously mentioned, like there is likely some collateral to be put from the validator side, and this kind of like guarantees for users that our confirmations are like our transactions are going to be pre-confirmed and included in blocks. How did you like select the numbers behind like those two words?
Yeah, it's generally an expectation based on block value and utilization. So, you have this regime today where you have a 32 ETH stake as a validator, and in some cases, block builders are staked with optimistic relays, but in many cases they're not, and they have some reputation. But essentially, they're producing an average block of, let's say, like 0.1 ETH, right? And then that kind of makes its way through the PVS pipeline. Now, you want to kind of increase this block value, obviously, by adding on these fees and presenting to the validator. And what do you anticipate that increase to be? Now, at times, this can be multiples of the existing value, and at times it could be a lot less. But on some sort of average, you can get to something around like 10%, right? Like so, and these are very kind of numbers that you play around with. They're not like based on some like definitive answer, because there is no pre-confirmation data that you can base it on. Now, as we build this data, we'll be able to kind of adjust this collateral dynamically, right? But famously, Justin Drake has kind of put forward this 1,000 ETH requirement, saying, hey, like in many cases, you're not going to have more than 1,000 ETH kind of worth of block, right? But then people push back on that, saying, in what case do you even get like 110 ETH kind of block? It's very, very rare, right? So it might average out, and it might also kind of be secured at the entity level, right? So you might be an entity like Kiln, and you might have, let's say, 1,000 validators, and you might bring on all 1,000 with one large collateral rather than kind of increase it linearly with every single validator, right? So at the end of the day, it's based on block value, what we anticipate block value and the transaction value in that block to be. And today, we've kind of come up with about 3 ETH worth per validator. Now, this is both a preliminary amount and it's a satisfactory amount. That's because it's about 10% of existing validator stake, right? So by existing your stake by about 10%, you get to unlock these kinds of economics, right? But as we unlock new use cases that go way beyond that, particularly bridge use cases where bridges we're looking for kind of instant finality guarantees might have amounts way larger than 3 ETH that they're transferring. So for those kinds of use cases, we might increase this stake requirement, which is then again made easier by restaking, right? Because it's much easier for a Symbiotic vault that, let's say, has $100 million of tokens locked in it to scale their restake, rather than, if you had kind of come in and put in 3 ETH, now you have to source in another, let's say, 10 ETH from somewhere in order to kind of up your stake. So that's another area where, collateral is just made easier by restaking, particularly in the case of Symbiotic.
Makes sense. So like, because you have like different profiles and like of users under the hood, like you mentioned, probably like bridges and likely L2s as well, and they may have like different requirements. Do you expect to have different offerings or like different products on which like validators could opt in? As in, like, let's say I have 3 ETH of collateral and I want to like just like not take too much risk, and 3 ETH is enough for me, and I don't want like to, I don't know, put 10 ETH, and even if it's like to get more rewards, it's like, how do you see this?
Yeah, we do anticipate validators to have different risk profiles as you put forward. However, we don't want that to deteriorate from the user experience, right? They don't, like, the user at the end of the day shouldn't care which validator it is. As long as there is one, they should be able to do what they want to do. So we're looking at alternative ways to kind of come up with that collateral. Like I said, this entity level one is a great one. For example, if you have 10,000 validators that you're bringing on, 1,000 ETH across that 10,000 might suffice. Whereas with the 3 ETH model, you would need 30,000 ETH, which, you don't need 30,000 ETH to secure pre-confirmations, because, at any given point in time, only one validator can be slashed. So you're not going to slash anyone with 30,000 ETH. So then, if let's say Kiln has brought on 10,000 validators, they already have 1,000 ETH in collateral. That's way more than enough for the bridge use case, right? Because at least up to 1,000 ETH, you're going to cover 80-90% of all bridge use. So with these levels of kind of innovations, whether it's like entity level restaking and whatnot, you're able to kind of check a lot of those boxes required for that. In other cases, would be extra risk that they would not want to take, right? So basically, collateral becomes kind of infinitely scalable once it's past a certain point, because we presume that Kiln is not in the business of kind of going against what they opt in for. So in most cases, any slash will be unintended or not based on malicious activity. So with that being said, with an entity level 1,000 ETH, Justin Drake was actually had a good point that they can achieve this by restaking, and then boom, they're able to enable so many use cases that no longer are kind of barred by the ceiling of the collateral.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that's most of the question I had. Maybe we can, are there like new products or new features you are like particularly excited about, like both on the pre-confirmation sides, but like also outside the scope of Primev, let's say?
Yeah, ones I can talk about, I'll put it that way. We have some exciting stuff in the works, but ones that are very interesting that are kind of coming up. As I mentioned, this instant bridge use case, it's a big one. Nobody wants to wait for bridges, and there are some bridges now that are saying, "Hey, look, it's not too slow. It's like 30 seconds or so." But I never wait 30 seconds when I'm interacting with Web 2. Therefore, my expectation for interacting with Web 3 is not 30 seconds either. So, instant bridges will be a big one, and more kind of L2 interoperability use cases is going to be huge, because now there's a network where L1 supply chain actors have given you essentially programmatic access, right? Like you can launch a contract on mev-commit chain, or even just use what's already there to programmatically interact with L1 supply chain actors. And this fundamentally creates a new design space to build all sorts of interoperability products. The very kind of straightforward one that we've talked about a lot is the synchronous commitments, right? Where let's say the an OP chain sequencer and L1 block builders give commitments at the same time. Therefore, that a transaction will happen in both those domains. So these are really exciting use cases that we're looking to unlock, but we're going to be adding a lot of MEV-related, bells and whistles to the bid expression on mev-commit as well, because there's often deals, these backdoor deals that people do with block builders, and no one's particularly happy about them because the resolution of them is very, very low. And at times, block builders have to do what they have to do in order to make sure that transaction is in, and sometimes place it differently. You have transactions coming from Telegram bots that experience what we call reordering slippage. And these are all things that can be avoided by expressing greater level of detail in your bid when you're sending a transaction. Hey, I want my transaction to be in the top 10% of the block. Well, statistically, you just avoided 80-90% of front running by just doing this. You don't have to be in the top of the block, but as long as you're kind of in near the top, you're already going to avoid so much front running. So these kinds of features will be available, and also we're getting a lot of protocols to ask new things. We're getting protocols that are asking for logs that are available in the commitment, so that they can pass the commitment programmatically to their dApp on another chain and have the dApp do something. And particularly from other protocols and staking groups, what we're getting is a lot more requests around decentralization, because protocols are saying, well, I'm about to bring on 10,000 validators and I'm going to increase my yield there. Great. But I like this protocol and I want to be part of pre-confirmations in a greater way. And I'm actually an operator for many other AVSs. So can I also run a validator on the mev-commit chain and earn those fees? so that, I'm not only just bringing my validators, but I'm also earning fees because I'm participating in this network, and therefore the network is also more decentralized. So you're going to see more coming from us on this that enables operators to run a node on the mev-commit chain and bring on their validators so that they can kind of be incentivized to do everything with the network.
Yeah, thanks a lot for all of those answers. Like it's very clear. You mentioned a bit interoperability. So today PBS is like valuable for validators because there is the PBS auction, and what drives the value for validators is the competition between builders. How do you see a world with let's say some standard of pre-confirmation, like could be Primev, how do you see it work with multiple builders so that the PBS auction is still a thing, or do you think the future is more ended towards one single builder?
I do think the competition, the competitive nature of the PBS auction is a key unlock to surface the most amount of value for validators, and anything that disrupts this is going to reduce that in some shape or form, right? And in the particular example you have is this kind of this leader-based pre-confirmations, which I talk about a lot, right? In some cases, they're really good because they can give a really good experience for the user, but in other cases they practically reduce the validator's yield, right? So, by creating a list of transactions that somebody has to include, you're essentially giving up profit. The competitive nature of PBS is really important, and when it comes to interoperability, we want to maintain that, and that's why mev-commit was architected in the way it is, where all of these actors can give commitments, and whenever one doesn't, that something is happening with the supply chain, right? And then you can also quantify that when it doesn't. So it's really important. But at the end of the day, for interoperability, you want some supply chain guarantees from both Ethereum and the other chain that you're interoperating with. And as long as those are there, which this year they will be, you're going to be able to kind of seamlessly do anything across any chain that is kind of onboarded in such a system. So Ethereum itself is going to be, very easily interoperable with its own EVM chains and its ecosystem. And others, like we're working with some protocols that are active on Solana, for example, and they have a huge amount of flow going from Ethereum to Solana and vice versa. They want to make this faster too. I mean, there's no reason why Ethereum shouldn't interoperate with a non-EVM chain either.
Makes sense. So let's say, I don't know, 1 year from now, where do you see Primev, in terms of, I don't know, percentage of block production, or do you have some sense of the direction block building is going to? Sorry, very open question.
Today is the 8th, and there's already a few blocks here and there on Ethereum mainnet that have pre-confirmations. So at this rate, we should have more than 100% by the end of the year. No, jokes aside, I do think there's going to be some critical mass around 30% of the network where basically everybody who is very excited about this technology has adopted it very quickly. And then the word is going to get out from their experience to everybody else saying, oh, wow, okay, like Kiln has done this. Oh, so-and-so has done this, and we want to do it as well. So I anticipate a similar kind of growth pattern to Mev Boost in that, you had this inflection point at 30% that then all of a sudden went to almost 80. Now it's 90+%. So, in terms of blocks, every block should have at least one pre-confirmation by the end of the year. With the exception of a few blocks here and there that have not opted into Mev Boost, or maybe some guy in Timbuktu running some software, right? And then we've seen on Holski, blocks with up to 20-30% of their transactions all pre-confirmed. So a vision where by the end of the year there's not just pre-confirmations but greater transaction fee expression on Ethereum, more privacy. So mev-commit is end-to-end private. All of your transactions can only be seen by people who you send the keys to. And these kinds of primitives will increase adoption of not just pre-confirmations, but all of the surrounding new transaction guarantees. So by the end of the year, I would think a large majority of blocks have pre-confirmations in them, and somewhere between 1 to 30% of transactions in that blocks consistently are pre-confirmed in one shape or form.
So the future is bright.
Yeah, it's all about making Ethereum fast. And, how many people trying to get into this block want it to be fast? I would say, probably a large majority of them, right? So eventually we're going to move towards a regime where all the transactions are fast, and Ethereum processes them in a separate kind of timeline, essentially. And that's how Visa works, right? Like when you go to a store, swipe your card, boom, it's done. But the underlying value settles 3 days later. They don't care about that. And it should be similar on Ethereum.
I kind of wanted to touch a bit on a bit more the restaking side of things. Uh, could you just like integrate like how the user flow of the validator, like if you had to kind of explain to like a node operator how to opt in and connect basically the L1 validators to like your symbiotic operators to make the link, and basically like how all of this, how basically like Primev integrates with Symbiotic, for example.
Yeah. So Symbiotic has a unique mechanism where they have a vault and an operator structure, right? So often an entity like Kiln, for example, could have a very large vault, and in this vault they can have millions of dollars of a certain kind of ETH denominated coin, let's say an LST that's restaked there. And then there's a node operator, which is again in this Kiln in this example. Right. And this node operator is able to kind of allocate this restaking capital that is locked in this vault. So, and the node operator, they also operate a lot of nodes, obviously, right? So what they do with mev-commit is they delegate part of their collateral in this vault towards mev-commit, and they opt in using our dashboard the corresponding number of validators. So let's say in this case, they have 1,000 validators. 3 ETH per validator, 3 ETH of value per validator, and you have about 3,000 ETH that you're restaking now through this vault on Symbiotic, and by this means you're able to opt in 1,000 validators, and that's all you need to do actually. You use relays that support mev-commit, which we anticipate all of them to at some point, but major ones already do today. And that's all you need to do. The relays and the block builders do all of the work. And this is by design, right? Because if you had to run additional software, now it eats into your yield. There's a cost to running additional software that you likely don't want to be having, right? So this approach kind of maximizes yield for validators, and has all of the value and all of the work be done by block builders like it is today on PBS, and the validators get to be the beneficiaries of it. Separately, they also get to earn points and soon potentially tokens, right? So the vault and the operator in this case not only gets additional yield by supporting pre-confirmations, but because they participate in the protocol, there's protocol rewards that come from them, both from Symbiotic and from, in our case, mev-commit. So it's actually a really large opportunity to be an early participant as a validator and kind of get going in this new paradigm shift in Ethereum.
So you're trying to FOMO us basically.
A little bit. I mean, nobody wants to be the validator that has a lot less yield than everybody else, right? It's like, hey, everybody's been supporting pre-confirmations. Let's say this is July of this year, and I don't, and now my APY is much lower than everybody else. I mean, you don't want that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I guess like we were wondering a bit like what's next for you guys. Like you're already on the testnet of Symbiotic. It's not exactly clear yet like when the mainnet will launch. Do you know exactly like let's say like if the mainnet of Symbiotic launches end of this month, do you feel like you would launch on day one, or would you need more time?
Yeah, we anticipate being live with Symbiotic as soon as the contracts are working on mainnet. There's a few activities around it that we'll want to support where, for example, if you go to our validator dashboard on Holski, the Symbiotic integration is there, but if you go on mainnet, it's not there yet. So things like that we'll also make available. But yeah, we're very excited about Symbiotic, and we've been working with a number of the vaults and operators for a long time now and getting and priming them for mainnet. So we anticipate full support.
Mm. I guess I had also a more open question about the restaking space as a whole. Like we've seen a lot of competition in the space. Like we've seen competitors come and go. When you are building a protocol and you're looking for economic security, when you're looking for shared security, what are the different things that you're looking to choose basically like the right restaking protocol for what you're trying to build?
Yeah, for us, the type of collateral is important. At the end of the day, we don't want to secure our protocol with something super volatile. And mostly like meme coins or something. Like I don't want Shiba Inu to secure the protocol because then the security of the protocol can go up and down really quickly. So because it's an ETH denominated protocol, if the collateral is ETH denominated as well, whether that's native ETH, restaked ETH, etc., it becomes really easy. And Bitcoin is also another one, and stable coins are others that we've begun exploring because kind of pricing them is a little easier in many cases. But for anything more sophisticated than that, you would need like an active price feed, etc., and people would have to increase their collateral. So choice of collateral has been a big one. But outside of that, because we're kind of a unique protocol and we, care about the validators coming with the economic security, at the end of the day, it's the validator's choice, right? Like, are you into native restaking? Do you have additional collateral that you like to restake? Do you operate a symbiotic vault? So that kind of like we like to accommodate validators in all shapes and forms. That's why if you go to our validator dashboard, you'll see vanilla staking, Eiger restaking, or symbiotic restaking. So and some validators do a combination of these actually. They run validators with Eiger, they run validators for symbiotic, and they combine them, and it's up to the validator at the end of the day. We're a bit agnostic to it, but we work very closely with these teams.
Yeah, I guess it's the same on the validator side. Like we kind of want to be agnostic and support whatever risk-taking initiative would be successful in the future. Uh, just going back to what you were saying around like the choice of collateral, you did mention stuff that are like outside of just ETH derivatives. So does it mean that on mainnet, like the symbiotic network will also accept like synthetic BTC, for example, like wrap BTC, USDC, stuff like that? Or are you sticking to ETH at the beginning?
So we are allowing Bitcoin denominated collateral. However, because we don't want to introduce that price feed, as I mentioned at this point in time, we're requiring kind of a little bit of an over collateral when it comes to non-ETH denominated tokens, because again, the price difference can fluctuate. So right now it's about like 5 ETH worth of Bitcoin that you would have to bring if you want to utilize your Bitcoin. And that can have a separate kind of APY compared to your ETH collateral. But at the end of the day, like we want to work with validators, we want to make Ethereum fast. So we don't want to bar validators that are willing to participate because they have one type of collateral over the other, as long as that collateral is somewhat reasonable, right? So we are accommodating BTC vaults on the Symbiotic as well on day one.
Great. Perfect. I guess to close things up a bit, uh, what do you think the future is for Ethereum? And I guess like it's bet on modularity. And do you think all of the advancements with like the basically like block building and all of the solutions like yourselves are bringing to the ecosystem? Like, do you think like Ethereum will I guess like overcome the kind of backlash it's getting currently from the community?
I do think so, and I think it's going to be so sudden that people are going to be like, "Wait a minute, what?" So the narrative is going to shift very, very quickly, and I anticipate some of that to happen this year as we make Ethereum fast. And this core idea of decoupling the speed of your interaction with the network from the network speed is going to be very, very important, because today all the L1 competition is based on network speed, and the minute that is decoupled, that's no longer relevant. And actually, when you have full pre-confirmations, Ethereum could have 10-minute block times like Bitcoin does, right? I mean, there's obviously other considerations that come with that, but it no longer becomes kind of a user need in terms of the network speed. And that's a major unlock that we're going to see with Ethereum.
Super interesting. I guess final question. Outside of what you guys are building at Primev, outside of pre-confirmations, is there any like thing that you're like extremely like excited about in Web3 today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm following the agent space. Definitely, I think the greater AI wave has a dent to make in the Web3 ecosystem. So the agent space is really, really important, and we think that agents will be a major consumer of pre-confirmations and other transaction guarantees. And it'll be interesting to see how they proliferate our ecosystem. But yeah, I'm very excited about AI's kind of foray into Web3 a little bit more and how the agent space evolves. Other than that, there's some exciting kind of block building activities. There's teams that are kind of slicing the block in different ways. There's teams that are building networks around block building, and I do think that is very, very interesting. But yeah, agents are the wild card of the current wave, I would say.
I guess I definitely agree. Like the AI agent meta like definitely disrupted winter vacations for me. So it was really like exciting to watch and get involved. Um, I am extremely bullish as well. I feel like AI agents is like kind of like in a way it's like crypto's answer to like getting like mass adoption. Like it's so hard to get adoption from humans, but if you can just like get AI agents that are like just completely like unburdened by the I guess like the habits that humans have and just choose the best technology. Like it's like technology like finding its own way and just like building its own demand for block space. So I guess it's super bullish for Ethereum and other blockchains.
I agree. Many people still, like normies, can't see themselves using blockchains, but they see themselves using AI. And if the AI uses the blockchain, then it's the same thing. So, love that.
Exactly. For our listeners, can you tell us a bit about what you like? Can you tell us a bit like how people can learn more about Primev, follow you on Twitter maybe, and stay up to date with the latest upcoming announcements?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Twitter is the number one source. We do have a lot of Telegram groups with different types of users and constituents. So if you reach out to us on Twitter, we can definitely funnel you into the right Telegram group where you can find the right folks. But as the network decentralizes, its reach in terms of who cares about it's going to grow from Ethereum supply chain actors to practically all Web3 users, and that's something we're very, very excited about. You're going to be able to participate in the network in many ways, and therefore I encourage everybody to kind of follow us on Twitter and stay tuned with the updates this year.
Nice. Well, thanks, Murat, for this great conversation. Thanks, MXS, for co-hosting. And for the listeners of the podcast, don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for the next ones.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, guys.
Thanks a lot.